Hi, welcome to PlantPure Live. I'm Kim Campbell and I'm so excited to be here. This is our very first show and this is my husband Nelson Campbell. Most of you know him. We are going to be doing these every week. We're going to be doing them live. We're going to be cooking some great recipes. But Nelson wanted to share a few things with you first about our internet.
Well, I also wanted to say thank you to our PlantPure Kitchen Live show. You're in for a treat. I can say from personal experience that Kim is an incredible chef. I get the benefit of that just about every evening. And when it's time to go, when she says, let's go to a restaurant, my heart sinks because I know it's not going to be as good. But at any rate, as far as, Kim mentioned the internet, so I wanted to say a quick word about that. We have been hustling to get high-speed internet connections set up here. We ran into a roadblock with this COVID crisis. Everything kind of shut down, as you know. So we are working hard on that, and we're going to have that set up just as soon as we possibly can. They were here just a couple days ago checking out our premises and making plans. So the resolution's a little bit low, but remember, we're sending a link to you via email. Use that link and you'll be able to get to a higher resolution version of this show later. But I just wanted to say that.
But we want people to come in live too.
Yes, we want you to come in live.
Yeah.
So enjoy the show.
Yeah. Thanks, Nelson. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time talking too much, but this recipe I'm making tonight, most of the recipes I'll be sharing with you are going to be main entrees. We'll have some appetizer shows, but I wanted to show you tonight a recipe that we're all kind of struggling with the COVID, with the grocery stores and with the limitations that we have. So I picked a recipe that I think you can find every ingredient at a mainstream grocery store, most everything, and if you can't, I'll help you substitute because that's what I love to do. So we're making one pot mushroom stroganoff. In the PlantPure Nation cookbook, I have a stroganoff recipe. But I wanted to make it even easier so you could just put it all in one pot, put the top on and not think about it. Because I know we're all getting tired of cooking, but what better time to become a better cook than now? So you should have gotten your recipe, you should have gotten your grocery list. So if you're cooking along, that's great. I hope you are. So you should have received those. If you have questions and things aren't going quite right for you, you can also email kitchen@plantpurenation.com, and Laura Dietrich, who is helping me with this, will answer all of your questions. So let's get started with this particular recipe. You're going to need a very big pot for this because this is a very big recipe. So I suggest you use a soup pot, something about the size that I have, because it's all going to go into one pot. But before I go any further, I want to talk about the importance of being really organized, and I am always this organized, right, Nelson? No, I'm not usually this organized, but I learned a trick called mise en place. It's a culinary term that we use to organize. So if you're going to cook along, I would recommend you get all of your spices out, all of your produce, have it cut, have it chopped, because you really don't want to stand here and watch me cut an onion. So your kitchen should look kind of like mine, and if you're getting your kids in the kitchen, this is a great way to help them because when they're organized, they really enjoy the process. So the first thing we're going to do is we've got an onion all chopped up, and we're going to heat up our pan. You want to get your pan hot. And I'm using a gas stove here in our kitchen. Wait. All right. There it goes. I'm ready for mistakes tonight. I am ready for it. Yes.
Someone says, I have low sodium liquid aminos. Will that work instead of the tamari?
Yes, absolutely. You can use low sodium liquid aminos instead of tamari sauce. You really can use tamari sauce, soy sauce, liquid aminos, whatever you prefer. I just love tamari because tamari was fermented from miso paste, so it has a really smooth flavor. It's also gluten-free, whereas soy sauce is fermented from soybeans and wheat and other grains. So when you're heating up your pan, the way you can test it, I don't know if mine is quite hot enough, is just put a little splash of water on and the water will start dancing around. If you start with a cold pan, you're not going to mess it up. You're just not going to create that quick caramelization that you get when you have a really hot pan. Caramelization is when your onion begins to brown and the sugars come out and they stick to your pan. Those are flavors. And that's how you build. That's how you start your recipe. Most recipes start with an onion because there's so much flavor in it. It's why they always tell you to saute the onion, then add everything else. So this is vegetable broth. I'm just going to test the pan with a little bit of vegetable broth. Oh, and you know what? My pan has some water already in it. So I'm just going to take this off. Let it dry out a little bit. So let's talk about vegetable broth while I'm waiting for that. You can saute with anything. You can saute with water. You can saute with vegetable broth. You can use wine, which I'm going to use wine tonight. I'm just checking my pan here. But I like this particular brand. It's Kitchen Basics because it doesn't have any sodium in it. If you can cook your meal without a lot of condiments that have excessive amounts of sodium in it, then you'll save sodium that way too. The other thing, since you're struggling getting ingredients right now and you don't want to go to the grocery store every 2 or 3 days, we don't want to do that. You can conserve, and the way you can conserve is use half the vegetable broth that I call for and then use water. So it'll water it down just a little bit. This pan is starting to get hot, and your pan should be getting hot too if you're cooking with me.
Kim,
Yeah.
does it matter whether you use a yellow or white onion in this recipe?
It doesn't matter what kind of onion you use. You could use a white one, you could use the yellow one, you could use a red one if you want. Red ones are, to me, just a tad bit sweeter. I don't know why this is taking so long to heat up, but you can use any kind of onion. While I'm waiting, so I'm really lazy. I like to cut, but sometimes I don't want to take the time. So I have something called the Vidalia Chop Wizard, which is really nice. It's the third one I've been through. And you just put your onion in there and just do like that. And you can do different sizes. You can do small dice or you can do medium dice. But I like to use this when I'm doing a lot of onions at once. And then I put my onions in a baggie and I stick them in the refrigerator or I stick them in the freezer. If you want to buy frozen onions, you can certainly do that as well. I think we're getting there.
Kim, is there a specific pan that you recommend?
So pans, I like stainless steel pans, but this is my favorite pan, and I always hesitate to tell people because it's a La Crusette, and they're very, very expensive. And we have a outlet here in Mebane, so I got mine at the outlet. I love this pan. I keep it on the stove all the time. I like stainless steel as well, so this is a stainless steel pan. I think I'm ready to go with my onions. And we're not going to use any oil. You don't need to use oil. Oil is just, think of it, it's processed, it's empty calories. You don't need to use it. It's 120 calories for 1 tablespoon of oil. No one ever uses 1 tablespoon of oil. They tend to use 2 or 3, so now you're talking about close to 400 calories. It's really, really unnecessary. So I'm moving them around, and if you use oil, people say, oh, I have to use oil because it keeps it from sticking. You still have to move around the onions when you're using oil as well. But don't use oil. You really don't need to. Don't even keep it in the house because when it's in the house, it's tempting. I have my heat at almost a high heat because it's cooking the outside of the onion really fast, keeping the inside of the onion still crisp. And then I'm going to use a white wine. So you can see I'm getting some brown on the pan. That's caramelization. And I want to lift it off the pan so it will get into my dish. So I'm going to use a little bit of white wine. And I think this one is a Sauvignon Blanc. So you want to stick with a dry white wine. You could use a red wine. It will still work if that's all you have. If you don't want to use alcohol, you don't have to. You could just use vegetable broth. Mushroom stroganoffs are typically made with wine, so it really helps to build flavor. When I was young, my mom used to make beef stroganoff, and she would use butter and cream and beef tips, and it was really good, but I think this is just as good. And that's about, you want to use about 1/4 to 1/2 cup of white wine. And you can see my onions, they look really nice.
Is Pinot Grigio okay?
Pinot Grigio is fine. The sweeter you go, even with the milks, if you go with anything sweeter, it's going to add an element of sweetness to your stroganoff, so it's really a personal preference. I think I've got enough caramelization. You see all that on the side of the pan? Get that off. Smells really good. All right, turn your stove off. Totally turn your stove off because you don't want to overcook the onions. That's about perfect. Now I'm going to add some garlic, fresh garlic. If you caramelize with garlic, the chances of you burning that garlic are really high. And when you burn garlic, it'll make the entire dish really bitter. Garlic is nasty when it's burned. So I tend to add garlic towards the end of the cooking process. But the other reason we're going to turn the stove off is now we're going to build the sauce. So we'll start with, I have them in order so I won't forget. We'll start with 2 cups of vegetable broth. Let's say you don't have any vegetable broth. You went to the store and they didn't find it. Just use water. Just use a little bit of water because there's so many spices in this, you're still going to get those flavors. It's not going to be as good as if you use vegetable broth, but we're trying to improvise, right? So it's okay to do that. Are we getting any questions, Nelson?
I'm reading them off as they come in.
Okay. But again, make sure you turned your stove off because I don't want to heat this up just yet, and there's a reason for that, and I'll tell you that in a second. Then we're going to use 2 cups of a plant-based milk. So let's talk about plant-based milks. We use soy milk in our house, always use soy milk. I just prefer it. I like the way it tastes. I like the way it cooks in a lot of my dishes, but I like this brand. I like this brand because it only has 2 ingredients, just soybeans and water, and they're organic soybeans. You can find it at Walmart, you can find it at mainstream grocery stores, you can find it at Whole Foods, Trader Joe's carries it. But really you can use any plant-based milk. But the thing I will tell you is make sure it's not sweetened, because if you add sweetened milk to this, it's going to make the stroganoff sweet, and stroganoff should not be sweet.
Hey Kim, if someone doesn't like the peeled garlic, what do you recommend?
Yes. Can I run over to the refrigerator for a second? Hang on. I don't like to peel garlic either, so I buy these, and they come in the, I don't know which camera to show it in, but they come in the produce section of a supermarket. These are really nice. You can also, there's a little trick you can take garlic cloves and shake them, and the peels fall off. Or just slam them with a knife and then pull the peels off that way. So, all right, so that's the milk. And then the next ingredient is, I want to make sure I don't forget anything, a couple of tablespoons of Dijon mustard. Make sure you use Dijon mustard for this recipe because Dijon mustard is very unique. It doesn't taste like regular mustard. Every Dijon is a little bit different, but this is the one I'm using. I think it's a Walmart brand. Every single one tastes just a little bit different. I love Trader Joe's, but I don't like their Dijon. So you got to kind of find the one that you really enjoy, but that's the one that I enjoy. And then tamari sauce, I use a low sodium. If you don't use a low sodium tamari sauce, you could just water it down or use half the amount. I believe it calls for 1 tablespoon of tamari sauce. Tamari sauce is sometimes a little more expensive than a soy sauce. Let me see. I actually made this before we started the show. And I'm just stirring it now. This is the end product. Just giving it a little stir, and you need to do that a couple of times.
Can you use any spicy brown mustard?
For this, I wouldn't use any mustard. I would use Dijon. But let's say you don't have Dijon, you could probably just use a spicy brown mustard. You know, I just think the Dijon really makes it. There's some things that I would definitely not substitute. Dijon is one of them. Then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. This is your thickener. So when my mom made stroganoff, she used butter and she used cream, and so that's what made it thick. And then she would reduce it. But we're going to use cornstarch. If you put cornstarch in a hot liquid, it'll clump. You'll get lumps all over because it quickly absorbs it on the outside of the starch, but on the inside it stays dry. So that's why you don't want to add cornstarch to a hot liquid. It's why I wanted you to turn your stove off. So it's already starting to get absorbed. Then nutritional yeast flakes, we'll add 2 tablespoons of that. Nutritional yeast flakes gives things sort of a cheesy flavor. Some people think it's a chickeny flavor. Some people think it adds a little bit of saltiness to things. So I think a little bit is cheesy and a lot is more of a chicken flavor. And you can get it unfortified or fortified. This one happens to be fortified with B vitamins. You can buy it on Amazon unfortified. This is great stuff. It's hard to find right now. I had a hard time finding it, and I had some in my cupboards.
Hey Kim, someone's asking if is the fire still lit there on the stove?
I turned both stoves off. Oh, this one's on low. You can't see the fire very well. This is a new stove, so we've just been playing around with it. But this one, the one that I'm working on, is completely off. You don't want to heat it up just yet. So then 1 teaspoon of onion powder, and some people might say, well, why are you adding onion powder if you've already put an onion in it? Because onion powder is different than onions. It's more of a sweeter, I can't explain it, but it's just a really sweet, a smooth flavor. So I put onion powder in a lot of my recipes. And then smoked paprika. No, I'm sorry, not smoked paprika. You want to use regular paprika. Nelson and I made this a couple weeks ago, and I used smoked paprika in it. And it wasn't horrible, but it doesn't belong in this recipe. So if you have regular paprika, I would go with that. And I think it's just just 1 tablespoon. It'll give it that nice kind of little bit of an orangish glow. So that's nice. And then Worcestershire sauce. Ever since I was a little kid, my mom taught me. Well, she didn't. We all said it the wrong way. So it's Worcestershire sauce. This is a vegan version. Worcestershire sauce is not vegan if you get the standard. It's not vegan because it has anchovies in it. And this does not have anchovies. So what do you do if you can't find vegan Worcestershire sauce? I would make it. It's not hard to make. It's vinegar, it's molasses, and a pinch of cloves. So if I can remember this, 1 tablespoon of this is the same as having 3 teaspoons of vinegar, apple cider vinegar, half a teaspoon of molasses, and a pinch of cloves, and you'll get this. So, okay, we're going to put, I believe, 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. And some people, when they're just transitioning, they may want to use their old Worcestershire sauce, and that's fine too. It depends on how strict you get, but I happen to like this a lot. And if once you stock your pantry up and you start getting these things that I'm using, cooking is really, really easy, because when you got your grocery list, there were a lot of items in there that were pantry items. And once you start building up your spices, you won't need to keep rebuying it. Okay.
So someone is wanting to know where they can find the recipe to make Worcestershire sauce.
I just gave it to you. So I looked it up online, and here at PlantPure, we had to actually make our own for our frozen line because we didn't want to use another product because there's so many ingredients in it. But you can go online, and this is the thing, Google vegan Worcestershire sauce, and you'll find all different combinations, but the best combination is vinegar, 3 teaspoons of vinegar, half a teaspoon of molasses, and a pinch of cloves, just a pinch of cloves. All right, and then I'm going to put a little bit of salt and pepper in here and some red pepper flakes. If you're not salting your food, you can do it at the end. You could do it now. That's up to you. So now we've got this really nice sauce, and it hasn't gotten thick because I haven't put my other ingredients in. So I'm going to put 16 ounces of mushrooms in here. Mushrooms are an amazing plant. They have a lot of antioxidants in them, mainly vitamin D, because mushrooms absorb sunshine, then they convert that into vitamin D just like humans do. So when you put your mushrooms out in the sun, they'll actually absorb vitamin D. So you can buy them, don't wet them, just take them out, put them on a cookie sheet or a bowl and put them out in the sun for 30 minutes to a half an hour, and they will absorb a lot of they'll absorb a lot of sunshine and make their own vitamin D. That's one way to boost your vitamin D, especially if you live in an area where you're not getting enough sunshine. All right, so then we're going to use our pasta. I think I called for about 14-ounce bag, and this is a 16-ounce bag. And Nelson likes everything really saucy. So I'm going to suggest that if you want it really saucy, use just a little bit less pasta. If you like it drier, use more pasta. This is a brown rice pasta. I like brown rice pasta. I like it better than whole wheat pasta. I'm not a whole wheat pasta fan. But you could use any kind of pasta in this. Just know that this will cook up a little bit faster. And right now, when you go to the grocery store, the pastas are hard to come by. Most of what I found was whole wheat pasta. So then you're going to mix it up. And the only thing you're not going to add to this is your spinach. You're going to add your spinach at the very, very end. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. Down on low. Oh, actually, I'm going to turn it on high. Turn it on high, and we're going to let it kind of boil and bubble a little bit. We want to get everything really good and hot. And while it's doing that, I made a pan over here. It's already cooked. It's sticking a little bit to the bottom. Now is the time when you want to put your spinach in there. And it only takes about 12 to 15 minutes. I just wanted to make sure that you saw the finished product. So you really just want to wilt your spinach a little bit. And this is a good time to put, if you want to put peas in it, or if you want to put sun-dried tomatoes in it. I'm going to put black olives in it because I love to put black olives in a lot of things. So I'll put about, I don't know, about a half a can of black olives. And you're really done. So I'm going to put this in a bowl because in a few minutes I'm going to try it. Let it cool down a little bit. Oh, that smells so good. And you saw how easy that came together? I'm going to turn that stove off. And this is going to bubble here soon.
Someone says, is it okay if the raw noodles aren't completely submerged in liquid, or do I need to add some water?
Yeah, some of them are not going to be completely submerged. You can see what I've got here. They're kind of sitting out. You're going to put a lid on this. As soon as that liquid starts to boil, you're going to put a lid on it so the moisture is not going to escape, and it will cook your pasta nicely. But again, make sure you don't overfill. I would say no more than 14 ounces. If you want to go 10 ounces, that's nice too. This one has a little bit less.
So how much frozen peas should go in?
You know, you can put as many vegetables in as you want. I would say about a cup, but if you want to put 2 cups, you can. You could put shredded carrots in this, spinach. You know, and somebody on our team said, what if I can't find mushrooms? Because he wasn't able to find mushrooms. So if you don't have mushrooms, try another vegetable. You could use diced carrots and peas. Don't use potatoes, because potatoes will really absorb all the gravy. Because this is really, it's a gravy. It was a Russian gravy. That's what stroganoff is. So you want to make sure you don't use anything that's going to absorb too much moisture, because that's what your pasta is going to do. So you can see it's starting to bubble. Once it starts to bubble on your stove, put your top on, and then turn it down. Make sure you turn it down or you'll burn it. turn it down to low, and just let it simmer for 12 to 15 minutes. Go in at 12 and just try it, see if you like your pasta. Every pasta cooks a little differently, and every person has a different preference for pasta. So this one over here, was perfect. And I think I had it cooking for like 15 minutes, but that's just what I like. Oh, that's really good, really good. So whenever I make dinner, I usually make a main meal, and this is fine all by itself. You can eat just that, or you can roast a side of vegetables, or you can make a salad. So I made a salad, and a lot of times I'll make a salad up on a Monday, and we'll eat from it for 2 or 3 days. I don't put the tomatoes in because they get a little bit slimy. So,
Kim,
yeah.
should it come to a slow simmer or a heavy boil?
So you want to bring it to kind of a bubble on high. As soon as it starts to bubble, turn it down to low, a low simmer, and put your top on. Because you're really just kind of simmering it. You're not cooking it on low or medium, just kind of like a low simmer. You have to play with your stove. Every stove's a little different, and I'm cooking on gas, and I don't cook on gas at home. So this one, I probably had it on a little bit too high. In the Instant Pot, I tried this in the Instant Pot, and I saved no time at all. So if you're trying to save time, I would say this is probably not the best Instant Pot recipe. I think it would work, and I haven't played around with the times, but it would work. It just doesn't save any time. Okay, so I'm going to have a salad, so I thought I would share a dressing with you. We're going to make I call it sweet mustard dressing, but it's really honey mustard dressing. You remember a honey mustard dressing. And I start with the recipe. The recipe that you have says 3/4 a cup of water. What I would do with that 3/4 of a cup is start with a 1/2 cup. You can always add more liquid, but you can't take it away. So I don't know what you like in terms of thickness, so I would scale back on the liquid and then add more later if you want to thin it out. So I started out with a 1/2 cup of water, and then we're going to use 5 medjool dates, 4 or 5.
Kim,
Yes.
were the black olives drained before you added them?
Yes, I drained the black olives. If you don't drain them, it'll still work, but I did drain them. So I'm going to add, how many did I say? I think I said 5 dates. If you're just transitioning to this lifestyle and you've been, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you have been eating soda and cookies and candy, and so sugar really lights up your brain, and your palate sort of is craving more sugar. Sometimes scaling back, for me, I hardly need 2 or 3 dates, but if you're used to sugar, you might want to start out with 5. So just kind of, you'll find the longer you do this, the more you'll really taste things like salt and sugar. You'll definitely taste oil. When I go out to eat, I know, even when they say there's no oil in it, I know there's oil in it because I can taste it. So then we've got the dates, we've got the water, and tofu. I really had a hard time finding tofu. So I went to 2 stores, and I did find this. It's shelf-stable tofu, and to tell you the truth, I've never used it. It's silken tofu, and it's nice. I made it the other night, and my dressing came out really smooth. So this is kind of nice. I might start buying this. If you can't find tofu, you could use white beans. You could use, maybe 1/4 cup of white beans, or 1/4 cup of cashews, or 1/4 cup of sunflower seeds. That will all work. In fact, the cashews will work really nice. But if you're trying to be careful with nuts, then I would stick with the tofu, although tofu has natural fats in it too. And natural fats are good for you. So then we're going to use mustard. This one, I just used a straight up yellow mustard, just a really simple yellow mustard. You can use any mustard you want. You could use a stone ground mustard, you could use Dijon mustard, any kind of mustard, but I'm just using regular yellow mustard. And then it calls for a little bit of vinegar, apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons. And then I think it has a tablespoon of lemon juice. Most dressings have 3 components to it. They have a sweetener, they have something sour, so you might want to use vinegar or lemon juice or both together. And then they have a thickener base, which is sometimes nuts or tofu or beans. So I think we've got everything in here, and we're going to use the blender, so watch your ears. Let's talk about blenders for a minute. You don't have to have a fancy Vitamix. If you do, it's great. If you don't, you could go out and get something like a Bullet, which is $100, around $100, and it does an awful lot. It doesn't last as long, but it does a lot. So I'm going to just look at this real quick because I don't want it to, it's still bubbling. All right, and then I'm going to stick it in here. And you don't have to blend it for too long because it's just tofu. Unless you're using nuts, then you need to blend it a little bit longer. I am blending it a little longer because I have dates in there and they're dried. I typically soak dates, but I didn't today because I completely forgot. And I can share with you the consistency of this. I don't know if you can. It's pretty thick. And I only used a half a cup of water, but I mean, if you wanted it thinner, and it'll probably, especially if you're using nuts and you put it in the refrigerator, it's going to thicken up even more.
Kim,
Yeah.
can you substitute figs for dates?
Yes. Yes, you can. Can you substitute figs for dates? Figs are going to be a little bit seedier. I mean, if you're okay with texture. The thing about eating plant-based, you're going to be exposed to textures that you're not used to. And there's so many textures in the plant-based world, and flavors and colors. It's just, there's so much to learn. Every day I'm still learning, and that's why I like to do cooking classes, because I learn a lot from other people. But right now, it's just me and the cameras for now. So if you have suggestions or you have really cool ideas, be sure to share them with us. We would love to know. I'm going to taste it. When you cook things, make sure you taste it. Ooh, that's really, really good. I love honey mustard dressing.
Kim, how much water did you start with?
I started with a half a cup, but the recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup. And really, as I'm tasting this, it's a little different than when I made it last week, because I used a little different mustard, because this is what I was able to find. So it's really all about your mustard. So I'll put that over here. Let's take a look. Yeah. I also did this with macaroni noodles, and it worked with macaroni. You can make one pot pasta dishes. You can make one pot spaghetti and cook everything all together. All right, so this is the final dish. It's all done. And I'm going to give this a try with my salad. I'm making a royal mess up here. The one thing about being social distancing and being home all the time is we actually have cooked for, I think it's a record, cooked for 4 weeks straight without going out to a restaurant. And actually, it's been nice. I feel a little better. We usually go out to eat once a week, or maybe we'll go out for breakfast on the weekends. But now we're cooking everything from home. We're cooking everything from scratch. So this is a great time to go plant-based, play around in your kitchen, and join us here at PlantPure Live. So I'm just going to try this one more time, you guys.
Kim, can you use lentil and other pastas?
You can. The question is, can you use lentil pastas and bean pastas? Our pod, we had a pasta party, and we made all different kinds of pastas. And I will tell you that bean pastas are a little bit grittier. They cook a lot faster. They're very tender. They tend to fall apart. So if you're using a lentil pasta in this, make sure you check it after, I would say, 8 or 9 minutes, because it'll cook a whole lot faster. So are there any more questions? Because if there aren't, I'm pretty much done here. I am really excited. I am really excited about PlantPure Live and you joining me. I'll put some more in here. I'm getting some guidance here. So that way you can all see it. But I'm really excited about doing these lives and you cooking along with me. I hope you'll join me next week. Next week we're going to make mali kofta, which is it's kind of an Indian gravy with veggie balls. I want to say meatballs, but sweet potato balls. So if you really like this show and you really want your friends and your family to enter into the plant-based world, share. Tell them about our show, support PlantPure. But thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you here next week, same time.